clusters of galaxies and so on. And this is work which SALT is involved in as well.
What have been some of maybe the key findings or key things that have been seen since the telescope has been operational?
Well, it's been in full science operation since September 2011. And some of the key areas have sort of reflected the strengths of the telescope's capabilities, both in terms of its instruments and the way it can be operated. Exoplanets is the real hot topic, or a real hot topic in astronomy, finding planets around other stars. And, right now we're standing at something like 900 exoplanets. So we're involved here in South Africa with a number of programs to search for exoplanets. But more recently, we've been following this up by observing particular systems that go through what's called transits, when a planet appears to go across the surface or the face of the parent star and blocks out a small fraction of the light. And so we've observed systems like that, and also made a discovery about 2 years ago, which was finding two fairly large gas planets, orbiting a quite bizarre close binary star. That is work which SALT is involved in and will be increasingly discovering new exoplanets.
SALT Science Director David Buckley. Now, the telescope has been operational for just over 2 years, and observing the range of discoveries David mentioned requires a wide range of materials, machinery, technology, and skilled staff. SALT designer Paul Copter takes us on a tour of the telescope.
Yeah, so this is the first floor of the telescope. This is what a 10-meter glass telescope looks like. We've got 91 mirror segments, which are about 1 meter in diameter, each one of them.
Can you break down this building to us? So we're inside a large dome at the moment, but there's kind of metal everywhere and lots of things going on. What are we looking at here?
Okay, so basically, if we start from the outside, that's the wall of the dome itself. It's got little louvers inside that we open up to get airflow in during the night, and that helps for turbulence inside the dome. These big ducts that run those are air conditioning ducts. So during the day, we condition the dome to be the same temperature at night. That ensures that we don't have thermal effects, thermal stresses in the metal itself causing the mirror to change its shape. All the tubes that you see here is basically this is the support structure for the telescope. So the telescope sits on 4 legs. Come around here. So basically, all the tubing supports the big black thing at the top there. That's called the tracker, and that is what moves around during the night while we're observing. So what we do,
that's like large black, and it's on almost a track that moves up and down.
It's a track. So basically, these yellow things at the bottom, those are air bearings. So we fill these bearings with air. The whole telescope lifts up like a hovercraft.
Something. Is Twitch not working? What's working? What's not working?
The tracker moves to the right position to be able to track the object in the sky. So basically, we put the structure down, and then that thing basically tracks the target.
Okay.
Yeah, so what we're going to do now is move the telescope to track it
I
access.
don't know if Twitch is working or not.
You can see the structure move. So you can see it's lifting up at the moment. We can stand a bit closer. You can see the leg lifting up. And this runs on 2 bar, which is the same pressure you put in your car tire. This whole structure lifts up on 2 bar of air pressure.
That's incredible.
And then it just runs along.
So it's just lifted up now and it's hovering in rotation.
The telescope design is such that it's at a fixed angle, so we can't move the telescope up and down. You can only rotate. You can only see a target for a certain amount of time. So basically, you set the telescope down, and usually it's for an hour or 2 hours. You can see a target at a time. So that's one of the drawbacks of having a telescope like this. You can only view targets for a certain amount of time, but the design makes the telescope much cheaper. Just the fact that you don't have to move this whole thing. So these grey boxes on the sides of the structure are called igloos. They house a bunch of electronics, but because the electronics give off heat, they have to be cooled. Otherwise, if you have heat moving around in the dome, you have turbulence, warm air moving around the cold air, and that causes diffraction of light, which we call dome sound. So basically, all the electronics are cooled down here, and all these massive domes running around, you see here.
Going all the way around, the entire dome.
That basically pumps glycol, which is a coolant that we use. There's a very big store of glycol in the maintenance building. A store of glycol in the maintenance building on the side. It gets cooled there, gets pumped underground into the building, and that's what you use for most of the cooling in the building, is glycol. And also interesting, this piece of concrete that you see here is the flattest piece of concrete in the southern hemisphere. So from here to the other side, it doesn't.
Is it a circular thing?
Yes, so it's very flat. Epoxy layer on the top.
Oh yeah, very smooth. So, but the actual kind of mirrors all coming together here. I mean, so what I can see, there's lots of hexagons so pieced together. And what is this width in total?
If you take the maximum hexagon diameter, it's about 11 meters. Minimum is around 10.
So it opened up its shutter to expose a stunningly clear night. Paul took me up the telescope to see the mirrors aligning, ready to target and observe for the night.
Okay, so this is what happens at the beginning of the night. We're going to open the louvers, we're going to open the dome, we're going to open basically everything inside of it. See some light pouring in through the walls, and that's the louvers opening, and that allows us to have a good airflow through the building at night, which decreases any turbulence inside the structure.
Yeah, but they're quite even actually. There's what, 4 of them down the lengths of the wall, and quite a columns of 4 of them going all the way around.
So now the shutter is opening, and that's what we call the CCAS tower, which stands for the Center of Curvature Alignment System, I think.
It's a tall tower, the height of the dome really, but it's a long column with really like a mushroom-like roof.
So up in that mushroom is where we keep the instrumentation there. And there are computers and everything inside there that make sure that the mirror alignment happens. So I think we should see a light source coming on up in the tower, which is a light source that we shine onto the primary mirror. And that's what we use to align the mirror segments with. So we do this at the start of every night. We do a mirror alignment, and maybe once or twice a year we just make sure that the mirror keeps its shape. We actually get degradation of the image quality, which then makes it difficult to get the right amount of photons down on the spectrograph that we need for people to do their science with. So the shape of the mirror is quite critical for us to do our science with, so that's why we have to do it a couple of times a night.
The telescope's role is to enable astronomers across the globe to look for their targets of desire in the southern night sky. As a result, astronomers bid for time on the telescope and get an astronomer on site to observe on their behalf, and then send them the data. The processing of these observations and data all takes place down in the control room.
So this is the salt control room. This is where all the action happens during the evening. If we start from the left, where the salt operator works, and those 2 screens, that's called SOMI, which basically stands for Salt Operator Man-Machine Interface. So the software she has there basically controls the whole telescope. We've got, I think, 4 primary subsystems, which is the payload, which is basically the tracker that you just saw up there. Everything that's inside the payload, and then we've got the tracker MMI, which basically tells you all the tracker information. The HDC MMI is for the structure dome control, which basically controls the building, and then Max MMI, which is the mirror alignment control.
You've got a lot of screens going on.
Yeah, so these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screens, including my laptop, that's all for me. And that's for the operator has their 2 screens, so that's called scan, but it's multicam. So that's called scan, but it's multicam. This is where the images gets displayed for the acquisition camera. So basically, all the light that comes off the primary mirror now gets tapped.
It's a great view
the
while I'm
part of Salticam.
stretching and warming up on the floor, isn't it?
The light comes in, then we have a mirror that sits at the positive angle. Light gets reflected onto Salticam. So this is then the image that you just saw. What we then do is we take this mirror out, and then the light goes up to the spectrograph. Now the spectrograph has what we call a little slit in it. So it's a piece of metal, a reflective metal with a slit in the middle, and then the light goes down the slit of the object that we're interested in. But then next to it, we've got a reflective surface that reflects light back into Salticam using what we call off-mirror relay, which is just a piece of optics in the payload. The reason we do that is that then we can make sure that the light that goes down the slit is the objects that we're interested in. So we're actually making sure that the telescope is aligned correctly for the object.
Looking at what you want to look at.
Yes.
And have you been able to see anything on this so far?
Well, my job basically ends here. I make sure that the data quality is good and as requested by the person that's doing the research. So these images will then get shipped to them electronically. We have a data reduction pipeline that runs down in Cape Town. So every morning all this data gets copied down to Cape Town. We have a server there that then reduces these images, puts them all together nicely, and then the images are made available to the researcher that requested the data to download. And then it's up to the researcher to then do all the analysis of the images.
Full astronomer Paul Kotzer. Now, as well as supernovae, the telescope also investigates exoplanets, planets outside of our solar system. The arrival of a high-resolution spectrograph in September aimed to make this easier. Keith Brown, engineer at SALT, showed me the site for the spectrograph.
We're getting the high-resolution spectrograph inside here. It can resolve the speed of stars down to meters per second. So basically, we're trying to find the speed that planets are moving to a resolution of, say, walking pace. That's the plan of the instrument. It's very sensitive. So it's going to be kept inside a vacuum chamber. The temperature is going to be controlled to 1/10 of the Kelvin degree. And then the vacuum chamber is going to be insulated. And then inside this whole chamber you see here, it's also insulated, and that's going to be controlled to within half a degree, 20 degrees Celsius. That's all to keep the optics bench as mechanically stable as possible. There's a very high specification on this floor that there isn't any vibration in this room. That's why it was built in here. It's in the middle of the telescope, underneath the telescope structure. It's a very stable room.
SALT engineer Keith Brown. You're listening to a special special edition of Naked Astronomy with me, Mira Senthilingam, taking you out to the site of the Southern African Large Telescope in South Africa. Still to come, how the presence of a telescope can improve the social development of a town it's located in. But first, the site where SALT is located is the field station, the South African Astronomical Observatory. This field station is 38 years old, and thus has a range of other telescopes as well as SALT in operation as well. Astronomer Pierre van Heerden explains the history.
The site was established in 1976 when the various observatories in South Africa were amalgamated. At that time, they took the telescopes from the Cape Observatory, the Johannesburg Observatory, the Radcliffe Observatory, and brought them all here. There are roughly 20 telescopes here. Of those, there are the 4 manually operated South African telescopes, the 0.5, 0.75, 1 meter, 1.9 meter. There's the Southern African Large Telescope, as well as the Alan Cousins Telescope, which are all completely South African, except for SALT, which is a multinational collaboration. Then we have just about a dozen, maybe a bit more, other telescopes from foreign investors. The small telescopes in Sutherland, they are more general purpose, but of course that means that they need to be manually operated, whereas the foreign telescopes that were purpose-built are much more easily automated.
Where are we from? So this is your telescope. Tell me about this telescope.
Well, this is only my telescope for this week. I'll be observing this on my behalf. This is the 1.9 meter telescope that was brought from the Radcliffe Observatory in Pretoria, and it was the largest telescope at the Sutherland site.
Back was cracking in.
One of the most common instruments that was used with this telescope is the same instrument I'm using tonight, and that is a Cassegrain low to mid resolution spectrograph, which we can use to find spectra of stars, which gives us all sorts of interesting information, such as the chemical composition and temperature and so forth. The program basically entails observing the several binary stars, and as they rotate, we would like to get one spectrum at each point in the phase or cycle of the rotation, which then, of course, we can get some really interesting information about the binary system.
So what kind of information would you want?
The data you would typically get from this sort of observation is the radial velocities of the studios. So, in other words, how far is the one star moving away from us, and how fast is the other star moving towards us? With very accurate measurements of the radial velocity, you can determine the mass of the 2 components very accurately. This also translates to very accurate measurements of the sizes of the stars.
Pierre van Heerden. As Pierre mentioned, some telescopes on site can lend themselves to being automated. Rudy Kuhn is a PhD student using one of them.
So this is just and it's an acronym for the kilo degree extremely little telescope. This is probably the smallest professional telescope in the world. When we talk about size of telescopes, we talk about the size of the mirror, the size of the necklace. And this thing has got about 4.2 centimeters length, so it's really, really tiny. Compared to the other telescope, SALT's got a 10 meter mirror, whereas this one is 4.2 centimeters. But again, SALT can see 50 stars at a time. We can get about 200,000 stars.
Okay, so can you give me an introduction to what this telescope is?
Its purpose is just to search for exoplanets around bright stars. So
They hurt the knees a bit.
A whole bunch of fields across the sky at night time.
Oh yeah.
A whole bunch of fields across the sky at night time, and it just takes a picture every 5 minutes or so of that field, flips between all the stars, all the fields, and it just monitors the brightness of every single one that it gets in its frame.
So, I mean, we're here today, it's a very clear sky. What will you be doing this evening?
So this telescope is robotic and automatic, so it's been programmed to look at a set out of the sky, and it will decide when to observe it, when is the best time to observe it. So if the moon's up, for instance, and the moon gets in the way of one of the fields, the telescope is programmed to ignore that part of the sky. But other than that, I don't do anything myself with this telescope. It's programmed to be sort of artificial intelligence and do something. We collect data over a seasonal period, so whenever a part of the sky is visible to us, so that takes about 4 months or so, and then we analyze the data.
When you get all this data together and you send it over and you start processing it, what are you actually looking for?
So we're looking for exoplanets, so planets around other stars. We're looking specifically for transiting exoplanets, so planets that move in front of the star as it orbits. So every time it orbits, the light from the star gets dimmer by a very slight amount. So we measure the brightness of stars extremely accurately over that 4-month period, and then if we see a change in the brightness every 3 days or something, we know that something is passing in front of the star. And usually looking for a planet, the change in brightness is less than 1%.
And then if it's not 1%, what could it be?
So if it's not 1%, it's probably another star moving in front of a bigger star, or a whole bunch of other things that look like exoplanets that
they turn out to be something else.
And so in 3 years that you've been observing this particular telescope, what have you managed to see?
We need a long baseline to do the scientific work, so we're only now starting to analyze the data and do the follow-ups for our particular telescope. So we have a couple of targets now that we're following up with other telescopes.
Those feel like more like cardio than
to help us out.
muscle.
Because the telescope is so small, what we see
I'd make my knees hurt though too.
so we need slightly bigger telescopes to help us out.
Really fun. Now that's almost it for this month's South African special. But before we go, we explore how the presence of a telescope in a small rural town can lead to numerous benefits to society as well as science through a collateral benefits program.
Welcome to those watching on YouTube. How you going?
So what about the actual direct benefits to the
If you're watching on Kick, I can't really see your comments at the moment because it doesn't show up on here. So come over to YouTube or Twitch.
In this area, there is a lot of poverty. There's teenage pregnancy, there's lots of drug abuse, there's a lot of challenges. And with the growth of the telescope there was so much transformation. We saw teachers who are interested in teaching nursing science or maybe Sutherland. We have trained people in Sutherland as tour guides. The people studied astronomy from our partners, and they are running stargazing sessions for the visitors in Sutherland. But part of the people that we train in Sutherland are also doing their own tours of the area. So the building of SALT helped in establishing the tourism industry in Sutherland. Because if you look at the history, before SALT was built, there were 2 bed and breakfasts. But after SALT was built, we have 40 bed and breakfast businesses. People of Sutherland were kind of isolated from the world, not only from South Africa, but with the building of the telescope, their minds are not only confined to what they are exposed to, but they are seeing the world as big.
Saviola Manhoy, manager of the SALT Collateral Benefits Program. Now that's all we've got for this month, but next month and next year, Dominic returns with more of the usual news and questions from the field of astronomy. Also listen to episodes from earlier this year at nakedscientist.com/astronomy. In the meantime, if you have a question you want to ask, you can get in touch by sending an email to astronomy@nakedscientists.com. This month, Naked Astronomy was produced by me, Mira Senthilingam, and comes to you from Cambridge University, with support from the Science and Technology Facilities Council. Until next time, have a great Christmas and a happy New Year. What are you doing?
I'm in a rush for sales. I'm stopping and smelling the roses.
Really?
Yeah, and Aldi price is always low.
Always low. Okay, let me try.
Aldi, good different.
Alright.
Hello and welcome to...
Uh-oh, sore throat? Don't just have any lozenge. Have Difflam Plus anesthetic plus antibacterial plus anti-inflammatory. Unlike others that only target the bacteria and not the painful swelling, Difflam Plus does both. With an antibacterial and anti-inflammatory formula, Difflam Plus does more, so you can too.
And we're back.
Find the Difflam range for a great price every day at Chemist Warehouse. Write with the label and follow the directions for use.
Are you ready to begin? Yes, I will say it there. Any program about science or a scientist is almost bound to focus on space.
Welcome to the first 2014 edition of the Space Box, in partnership with the Naked Scientists, Sue Nelson, and our special guest, the world's most famous astronaut, Chris Hadfield.
More than 20 million people have now watched Chris Hadfield's gravity-defying version of Space Oddity, recorded during his 6-month command of the International Space Station last year. And in a moment, you'll hear Commander Hadfield talking about everything from fixing a space toilet to musicians in space.
One word anyone uses to describe Chris Hadfield is inspirational. He managed to reach a far wider audience than almost any astronaut since the Apollo days, such as these children from Campspawn School in Haringey, North London, who sang with him at a recent Canadian High Commission reception.
I think he's amazing and he's a very good voice.
Okay.
Why do you think he's amazing?
Because he's done so much of his life. He's gone out in space, he's survived, unlike some spacecrafts which have crashed. He's sung a song in space and he's come back successfully. My name's Ainara and I think that Chris Hadfield is really cool because he went in space and sang a song there. It's really amazing that somebody can do that. I think he's a really good option.
Why is that?
Because we went to space
We'll do
and in space there's no
22.5.
My name's Carol, and I think he's really influential, and so I think it's amazing what he's done. My name's Cheyenne, and I think that Chris Hadfield is an amazing person to when you're in space and you have
20,
to do work.
yeah,
but, like,
22.5.
you also have to do at the end of the day. It's really cool. He's done so well in his life, and he's been so successful.
As in, do you want to be an astronaut?
Yeah, but
Just a bit.
Astronaut Chris Hadfield singing with children from Catspawn School in Haringey. We met up with Commander Hadfield in a basement room at the BBC, and after the obligatory selfies, which you can see on our Facebook page, he asked Chris to introduce himself.
Hi, this is Chris Hadfield, recently back from a long voyage. I was on this trip.
Now, if we could start this with a question. I asked our 13-year-old son, what questions would you ask Chris Hadfield? And he came up with a number, but I think this is a great one. His first question was, what do you miss about not being in space? What do you miss about space?
You know, I try not to. Like, I mean, I spend very little of my life backwards. There's so much going on right now. There's so many challenges and interesting things coming in the future. I'm just sort of proud of what's happening. I really don't miss it. We were really hard. I flew in space 3 times. I failed the unforgiving 60 seconds with every single time. And so I came back from space feeling tremendously satisfied with the whole experience. I don't think the upper reaches of the wall miss the lower reaches of the wall. That's just the foundation that you get to where you are. So I don't actually spend any time reminiscing and missing.
Not
to me,
even about the view, because
well,
I
but
can imagine you
part of
wanted
it.
to.
Yeah, but the view is interesting. The view is not part of it. The view is
Now,
in my head, so I don't miss it. It's a way for me to appreciate the world.
Can I ask you about the toilets then? There's one incident in your book where you are fixing a malfunctioning toilet, taking it apart, while at the same time trying to coordinate the spacewalk of 2 of your colleagues. Just tell us about that.
That was my first time in space, in fact. I was sent for a month.
okay, so 10, 20, 30,
which is very painstaking, and
30,
consequences of a mistake can be really bad. So you have to be really dogmatic and careful, and you do it in Russian, of course, because you're talking to cosmonauts, but also you're talking to mission control in Moscow, specialists. So it's a very it's a demanding time. Well, just before they got ready for their space walk, in the American segment, and I was the only guy there. Everyone else was either in a part of the space station that was blocked off for the spacewalk, or they were doing an experiment they couldn't extract themselves from. So if I didn't fix my toilet, it wasn't getting fixed, and that's not a good way to need it, whether you want it or not. So I was taking the whole toilet apart. I was elbows deep in the innards of a fairly complex non-gravity, non-water toilet, and rebuilding the separator compressor. And then the Russians would call, so I'd clean up myself and wipe the toilet off me, and then go whip it back and talk with the guys and do the next step and clean up the toilet back and forth. It took about 3 hours. But at the end of 3 hours, the guys were safely outside. Their suits weren't leaking. The next one step in the procedure, everything was good. And I threw the switch on the wall, and the toilet went, which was a great noise to hear. And so it was for me, of all days, that was my space highlight.
Is this why your sort of engineering background came into its fore there?
Well, I grew up on a farm, actually, and having to fix a machine on your own is what farmers do. The tractor breaks in the back of the fields, and all you have is a set of vice grips and a slot screwdriver, and you got to figure out how to make it work again. And so a little practical, what my dad would say, thinking with your hands. If you can think with your hands and make things work, that's a really nice trait to have developed. And I think I learned a lot of it, not just as an engineer, but growing up on a farm.
I don't want to dwell on personal hygiene for the interview, but there's one other incident I haven't go to anyway. There was another incident that you described the amount of exercise you had to take and being on the treadmill and doing all this exercise every day to keep fit and make sure that when you get back to Earth you can stand up. And you talked about sweat, and you have to be really careful. You don't hurt other people with your sweat.
Well, I think what happens, anybody who's been on a treadmill or lifted for a while, or even just beaching and you look down and your sweat actually drips on the ground. You have to wipe the handlebars off. Well, imagine falling, but it flew off your body in all directions, depending on which way you turned your head. Or that little sometimes droplet of sweat that's on the tip of your nose. Well, if you turn your head and whip that at someone across the room, they do not want to be attacked by flying sweat. So you actually float a towel in the air next to you. So it's hovering like an attendant jellyfish next to you. And you regularly grab the towel and just wipe the sweat off your body and then let go of the towel and let it float next to you again. Because you don't want to get to the point where this gooey mass of sweat suddenly burps off your body and goes in and splats on something else.
The film Gravity, which I know you've seen, because I've seen your comments on it, think you've represented the risk that's involved with space travel accurately?
Sandra Bullock described the movie as an amusement park ride. I thought that was intended to be realistic. It's intended to be provocative and evocative, and the visuals are magnificent. The visuals
Do
are
they compare?
well, the visuals, at least during a spacewalk, are better than any I've ever seen. They invented technology to make those visuals. They're beautiful and very reminiscent of being out on a spacewalk. The storyline is, it's all Hollywood. It's not supposed to be.
You think George Clooney on one?
Well, it's just not supposed to be. The character types aren't right. What they do isn't right. The orbital mechanics don't make sense. But so what? I can watch a Batman movie and I'm fine. Or Superman. It doesn't worry me that web shoots out of someone's wrists. I think that's okay. So I don't know why I'm doing any different. No, it's an amusement park ride. And if you're thinking of being an astronaut, that is not a training film. It's just entertainment.
There is a massive amount of training involved in being an astronaut, and given that currently to get to the International Space Station, the number of people, the competition to get that job is immense, isn't it?
Well, if I want to fly in space, someday I want to maybe fly a Russian spaceship. Okay, that's going to be a long time from now. So let's just think about fly a Russian spaceship. Well, we don't fly it in English. It's a Russian spaceship. All the manuals, all the procedures. Okay, so I need to learn to speak Russian. And the instructors, the professors, they also. So I need to take all those classes in Russian. And if I take an interpreter, that's okay. But when I get in the actual spaceship, there's not going to be an interpreter there with me. So I first flew a Russian spaceship in 2012. My first Russian language lesson was in 1993. Almost 20 years prior. It took me 19 years of anticipation and training just to get to the point where I could competently sit in the Soyuz and operate for hours and hours in 100% Russian. And that's just, I want to fly a Russian spaceship there. I have to learn a whole other language. And we treat medicine the same way, programming the flight control computers, operating the robot arms, doing star fixes, and understanding the geology of the Earth. We treat them all with the same level of preparation and respect and training. So it's decades of training to properly advance it to be one of the few people on the space station.
But right from the first pages of your book, you've spent your life training, effectively, or perhaps preparing to be an astronaut, which I like. I like that single
Well, I count myself usually lucky. I love learning. A long time ago, when someone offers to teach you something for free, take it on. You're going to learn something, and then you'll have more skills. And you never know when those skills are going to come in handy. When I was a teenager, I was in a program. It's a great program to teach you to fly. But we used to shoot rifles competitively on a range indoors. Very carefully aim something, control your breathing to try and hit a target. When I was docking with the Russian space station Mir 25 years later, we use a handheld laser to try and measure the distance between the two vehicles. Absolutely critical for distance and speed. It's exactly the same. And I never thought, when I was learning as an air cadet, to handle a 22 rifle, what I was really training for was to dock two spaceships together. When someone offers to teach you something, you want mine. Keep training and learning things your whole life. And I'm now finished as being an astronaut 35 years ago, and I want to go back to school. There's so many things I want to learn. There's so much stuff in the world that I'm still that I just want to keep studying.
To be an astronaut, the amount of training, you say training from the earliest days, you talk about fixing the machinery on the farm, how that helped you fix the toilet. Is that always going to be the case? Are we under some sort of illusion that actually there will be a time when we can all go into space?
I tend to lead my life that way. In the book, I call it visualizing failure. That's how I lead my life. I don't visualize success, because if success happens, then that's great. If it doesn't happen, which is normally the case, normally things go right or don't go right, how are you going to deal with that to get where you want to be? That's what life is all about. How are you going to deal with the things that go wrong? And if you're just counting on good looks, then maybe that'll carry you sometimes. But a lot of the time, you're going to end up making a mistake, or being nervous, or being scared, or dropping the ball because you just weren't ready. And that's what I think education is. It's just getting ready to do things better. Having more tools. If you have a toolbox, why would you get a toolbox and only stick 2 tools in it? If you can continually fill it, and plus, before I learned Russian, I didn't really enjoy being in Russia. But once I could speak the language, it's a fascinating place, so deep and cultural and interesting. And I kind of view everything that way. Once you learn the tool that lets you unlock that particular door, life becomes richer. So I'm not going to stop now that I've flown in space 3 times.
I suppose my question was really whether the rest of us can be astronauts, or whether we accept that it's going to take superhuman effort to get there.
I suppose with all the commercial space flight happening, all you have to do now is pay enough money and you can be a passenger.
Well, I'm not superhuman. I'm human. Absolutely. I can participate rather than.
Okay, that's not particularly impressive. But you have to be, you're single-minded driven a lot of that along the way. But what I'm saying is it possible for the rest of us to be astronauts? And what astronauts will spend, enormous sums of money? Will it make us astronauts?
It's like saying fly an airplane. People that are sitting up front on British Airways or whatever, the captain of a big airliner with 3 or 400 people, that's a very highly trained person, and he or she has
spaceflight will be like that, where there are people who spent their whole lives getting the space to trusted to operate the spaceship, but there'll be, just like there are air travelers, there'll be space travelers. And everyone's sort of an astronaut, I guess, depending, you have to figure out what the right words are now. If you've orbited the world in a spaceship, that makes you an astronaut. But your role is kind of up to you.
More like a space tourist, really.
Well, or a space traveler, like an air traveler.
Space commuter, even.
Yeah, and eventually there will be space travelers. So far, you had to have been phenomenal on the order of $35 million to go ride on Soyuz. Soon, I think, Richard Branson will be able to take people up for the price of a really high-end, a Bentley or whatever. But there are lots of people who buy Bentleys. It's not everybody, but there are lots of them around. So that's getting into the range where private citizens can fly in space. They're not going to be controlling the world, but they're going to get the experience of business inside the world. And that's a really important step. And I think it answers your question. Yes, somehow, a huge responsibility company for being the most informed person, because that's what we have to do the step after that.
I wonder though whether people will be as inspired as they were by you just doing a music video, singing in our songs. When he saw it, he was just and he's surrounded with space that's because of us. That's an important part of outreach and education. Did you always have that in mind, or was it something that crept up you? Because I know your son was.
Well, I've always wanted to share the experience. Whatever technology was involved, I just did my best to share it. It's way bigger experience. But actually recording the song Space Oddity was not planned at all. That was a weekend project I did as a favor to my son. And he did such a wonderful job of editing the video. The Canadian Space Agency approved all that video in a big hurry. We got permission from Bowie himself. And over a week, my son and a friend of his put together that video just so my father saw it. And he released it just privately. And that on YouTube, he released it, almost 20 million times. Don't rebroadcast. It's hundreds of millions of times.
12, 13.
Did you have to do retakes?
I recorded the vocal track. I think I did 2 takes of the vocal track. And then for the video, I just floated around and sang the song about one Saturday afternoon. Just sent all the video to the ground. And then they pieced it together into different sections of the station and did a magnificent job. And I think it's important to look at because it ties together the fantasy and imagination of exploration and the rest of the universe with the reality of the people actually doing it. It's not just a song. It's not a soundstage. It's not a special effect. This is a beautiful, iconic song that feeling of space travel, but actually done in space by a real person who's actually up there. And I think that combination makes it sort of hypnotic a little bit to look at it. And I think others like the same way.
Does it help, do you think, that you're Canadian rather than American or European? Did that almost being a neutral out there? That gave it a global appeal, perhaps, that an American astronaut would not have?
I was NASA's director in Russia. Amazingly, I don't even work for NASA. I'm a Canadian. I work for the Canadian Space Agency. They brought me to NASA, and NASA trusted me enough to be NASA's director in Russia. And I found that to be a great position because I wasn't an American, so the Russians would talk to me differently, and I wasn't a Russian, and the Americans would talk to me differently. Canada's geographically in between the United States and Russia, but it's also sort of temperamentally and philosophically, politically in between the two. So I really count myself hugely lucky to be a Canadian in that position. And I think for a song like that, it emphasized the fact that this was just a person up there singing. This isn't, I'm not a rock star. I'm not representing some big glitzy thing. All I did was do my best to make a version of a great song in a place that really shows the song off to its best advantage. And I think that was a little bit contagious also.
I have to say though that you are now, along with William Shatner, my favourite Canadians.
And I know William Shatner now.
You are so lucky.
Yeah, he's a really interesting man. I mean, he's 82 now. What a fascinating thing he's been doing for the last 15 years of his life. And
But too scared to go into space, apparently.
Well, yeah, perhaps. But I'm getting to know him, which is a real delight because, of course, I just idolized him as a kid as Captain James Tiberius Kirk. He was superhuman and he was a comic book character. But as a human being, the real man behind that is really interesting and thoughtful and philanthropic, doing lots of good things for a lot of good causes. I have big respect for him.
Given the reach of that video and how far it went round, and also what you did with social media and everything, does it suggest that actually what we need is some artists and musicians and writers in space rather than straight down the line astronauts? We need people who can articulate the wonder of it all.
Well, right now it is right at the edge of our ability to safely fly in space. Edge of our ability to see space. And it's really difficult to take someone up who isn't qualified, because if a person isn't qualified, that means someone else has to be taking care of them. So to have one person who's unqualified basically takes a qualified astronaut out of the mix. And that's a big trade-off to make. And so we're just making it safe enough now that maybe we can start to fly people who have minimal training. but the space station is a huge, complex place. I agree with you completely. We need to fly the people, artists of the world, the Elton Johns of the world, decade after decade, write wonderful artistic interpretations of life that help us all appreciate it better. Imagine if we flew Bowie on the space station, what he would have come up with. But it's, we can't kill people in the process, and right now it's really hard. But there are lots of astronauts who are musicians, there are astronauts who are artists, and for now we're just trying to make do. Eventually, hopefully through what Richard Branson is doing and the things that will follow, we will be able to open it up to people from all different other skill sets that will help bring it even more firmly into the culture of the world.
So ideally you want a musician who can fix the toilet.
Yeah, as opposed to the other way around. Yes.
Commander Chris Hadfield, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Really nice to talk with you both, and tell your son hello from me.
We will.
Thanks.
Commander Chris Hadfield, and you won't be surprised to hear that he was really nice.
He was. It was a real pleasure, actually, to... Inspiring is the word everybody is. But what I liked about him was he was down to earth. He looked forward. And I love the fact that at the beginning of that interview, he looked forward to things he was going to do, as opposed to sort of, I suppose, resting on his laurels, effectively.
Well, that's really interesting, because I've spoken to a lot of the Apollo moonwalkers, the moonwalkers in particular.
Oh, dear.
And a lot of them had a meltdown after they came back from the moon, because it was that thing. Oh, I've been to the moon, I've walked on the lunar surface, what am I going to do next? And several of them really struggled with that. But Chris Hadfield, he's just going to do something else and he'll do it really well.
I don't know whether that means he's the sort of current lot are made of sterner stuff, or maybe it's just become more routine or more within someone's reach, because in the 60s, becoming an astronaut, yes, it was a childhood dream for millions of children, but your chances of becoming one were extremely low. And now, although they're still much, much higher, look at these competitions that you can apply for, the chances of getting into, the European Space Agency, UK Space Agency, so actually it's more attainable, I think, now, and maybe that means astronauts are a bit more rounded.
I was going to say he's a bit more grounded. Anyway, we'll put some pictures of us and our new best friend Chris on our Facebook page, and we'll tweet them as well. Do let us know what you think about that interview, and we do promise to update for 2014 the spaceboffins.com website.
Congratulations, by the way, to Gillian Finnerty. She's one of the 1,000 people shortlisted to go to Mars through that Mars One call-out that came at the beginning of 2013, out of a staggering 200,000 entries. Hopefully, we'll be hearing from Gillian in person soon.
That's the Space Boffins podcast. In partnership with the Naked Scientists, we're supported by the Atrium Space Insurance Consortium, ABSL Space Products, and with a grant from the UK Space Agency.
Alex Studios will be back next month with more Final Frontier. Thanks for listening. Stay classy, Space Boffins.
Stay classy, Space Boffins.
Thumbs up from Canadian astronaut Chris Hadfield returning from his command of the International Space Station. Chris was the first Canadian commander on a spacecraft, wrapping up a historic 144 days on board the station.
Authorised by the Australian Bureau of Statistics, Canberra. The census is coming this August, and we need to hear from everyone to help plan for Australia's future. People from every walk of life. You'll get instructions soon on what to do. For more information, visit census.abs.gov.au.
What are you doing?
I don't know, rush for sales. I'm stopping at Sony Roses. The price is always low.
Always up them. Okay, let me try.
Good different.
Are you ready to begin? Yes, I'm all set, sir.
Any program about science or scientists is almost bound to focus on space.
Welcome to Space Boffins with Richard Hollingham and Sue Nelson partnership with Naked Scientists. And this time, we're heading to Mars.
Now that's whirring sound you can hear in the background there from the wheels of a prototype European Mars rover. The final version is being sent to the Red Planet in 2018, so we've come to the Airbus Defence and Space Factory in Stevenage to meet some of the engineers who are working on the project.
Also, this time we hear from the team behind the new cameras that we fitted to the International Space Station to offer us live views of Earth and all the things that are good about the world's smallest satellite.
Substantially cheaper, substantially smaller, substantially easier than anything that's in space before.
With us is Structures engineer Abby Hutting, who's working on the ExoMars rover, and Advanced System Architect Matthew Dunstall. That's rather a cool title for what I believe is advanced concepts, including the next Earth observation mission.
Yes, indeed. We're looking into the future beyond the missions that are currently being implemented 10 years more ahead as to what might be happening in commercial areas of space, primarily rather than the science aspects.
Well, we'll catch up with the future a little later on, but we're going to begin with Bridget, because that's the name of this Mars rover. It's pretty big, actually. It's about the size of a very small smart car. It's got 6 wheels. It's on a carpet forward with some strategically placed rocks, so that as you navigate it up and around the rocks, and at the moment She was a prototype. She's perhaps not in the first, flushes of youth here, is she?
Well, Bridget was the very first prototype that we built to demonstrate that we were capable of building a Mars rover. And since then, we've developed the design quite a lot further. So Bridget is largely used for outreach purposes, going out and inspiring the next generation. Sometimes we do field trials as well. We take her out and do testing in cold, dry environments, like the Atacama Desert was the last one, so that she can demonstrate some of the actual equipment that's going on the rover as well.
So what have you learned from this rover? I love the fact that the two cameras on the top of its extension, a bit like a scooter handle, a bit like a pair of eyes there.
Well, we actually have two cameras at the top of the mast so that we can see in 3 dimensions, like we humans have 2 eyes. And that's what gives us our depth perception on Mars, so that we can actually see what's in front of us, work out how big it is, and then decide whether or not we can actually traverse that terrain.
Now, there's a big difference, though, between Bridget and the modern ExoMars rover. Before we get into what that rover is going to do, tell me a little bit about the conditions that a rover like this will have to cope with on Mars.
Okay, so we know that Mars is obviously rocky and sandy, but the things that we also have to take into account is it's really, really cold there, so much, much colder than we'd expect to find here on Earth. So materials behave in a very different way in those kind of environments. We've also got a very harsh radiation environment there because they're not protected by an atmosphere in quite the same way as we are here on Earth. So we've got a harsh radiation environment. And then we have to deal with low power constraints and things like that as well, because we can only make as much power as we can collect from our solar arrays. So we've got all kinds of things to consider simultaneously.
Now, you're operating Bridget with a little remote control, sort of see if you were using a computer game or an Xbox or something like that. But the ExoMars is going to be autonomous.
Yes, that's one of the big things that we've really been developing with ExoMars is a full autonomous navigation suite. So the software is very advanced. It can actually look at what's in front of it, determine how big the obstacles are and whether or not that's a safe place to go, and then plan its own path through the obstacles in front of it to reach a goal that we give it. So we can give it a goal. It doesn't even have to be within its field of view, and then it can work its own way out further and then just phone home when it gets there and say, okay, what science do you want me to do?
So tell us about the ExoMars mission. It's a mission that's evolved to be diplomatic over the last few years. It's now 2 missions, a 2016 mission and a 2018 mission. It's the 2018 mission that you're building the rover for.
Yes, so the 2016 mission, we're sending an orbiter. So that's going to be a trace gas orbiter. It's going to tell us a lot more about the composition of the atmosphere of Mars, and it will also be able to send back imagery and data. We also have on board there an actual entry, descent and landing demonstrator. So this is what we're going to use to test that our design that we're going to then develop into the landing module for the final rover is adequate. So in 2018 we can send our rover with its new landing module, hopefully safely land on the surface and do everything we want to do with our rover.
And how much are you having to do from scratch? I mean, reinventing the Martian rover wheel, if you like, given that NASA has done this before and is doing it right now.
We're approaching the design for our rover in quite a different way to NASA. So whilst we do share some data, and it is quite a collaborative process, we share all the data that comes back from our auditors, our actual design has very different focus. We're solar powered, we're a lot lighter, and all those kind of things. So it's not that applicable maybe the design that they've got.
As a structures engineer, I know that you've got various test facilities in the buildings surrounding you here. What sort of testing will go on for ExoMars here?
In terms of the structure, we do quite an extensive selection of tests that are at low temperatures, because that's one of the key driving forces for our materials and our structure there. Also the vibrations that we're going to experience during launch will actually try and tear the structure apart, vibrate the structure apart. And other things that we can test, we've got a big Mars yard that we're developing here, which has representative types of sand and rock that we can test the driving capabilities over, make sure that our functionality of our driving system means that we're not ever going to get stuck in sand or damaged when we fall over rocks.
Now, I know you've pulled out that we're indoors, with orange carpet and rocks. It's brick, almost like a
Someone's gone out to a carpet shop and bought an appropriately coloured carpet.
But Mars Yard, which you've been in, Richard, it's close for business at the moment because you're getting a brand spanking new one.
Yes, we're very excited. We did have a Mars Yard facility previously, and that was very useful for our preliminary design development. But now we've actually got several prototypes that are all being developed in conjunction, so looking at different aspects of the design. So some of them are developing the software, some of them are developing the hardware, the actual structure of the rover, and we need to be able to test those simultaneously to continue developing each of these streams of design. So we're going to have a much bigger facility. It opens very soon, and be able to test several rovers simultaneously, which would be great.
I love the fact that you've found the speed limit to go to Mars. That just makes sense.
You're still in space now, aren't you?
And the soil that we put in that Mars yard is as close as we can get it to Martian soil. Of course, it's not real Martian soil. Martian soil, of course, it's not real Martian soil. If we had that, we wouldn't have to go to Mars. It tries to replicate the mechanical characteristics of Mars soil.
Now, I've seen the Curiosity rover, or at least the identical twin of the Curiosity rover, at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California, and I managed to break that, or at least jam it on a rock. How difficult is it to try this? Are you trying to push it to the limits to make sure, I know you're not giving me the controls, that you do push it to the limits and see what it can do?
Well, it is very useful to be able to test exactly how steep an incline you can climb on, how deep a sand river you can go through, and all of those kind of things, so that you set yourselves limits. But then once you're actually on Mars and we've got our autonomous navigation in place, we're never going to take risks that we don't think that we're going to be able to survive. So the whole idea of this autonomous navigation is we know what our limits are, and we make sure that we behave completely safely so that we won't lose the mission.
What I find quite impressive is that it's got the turning circle of the black cab. It's really tight.
We can actually turn fully on the spot. So that means if we get to a point maybe there's a sand slip in front of us or something like that, and you really can't go any further forward or to either side, you can turn completely on the spot and get out the way you came.
This will come the system. Are you looking forward? Are you going to get to actually drive it on Mars?
Well, theoretically, nobody drives it while it's on Mars because it's driving itself.
Great stuff. Matthew, I know you've been working on future concepts for Mars rovers. What would be the next sort of after ExoMars?
There's a few things to mention there. One is you always want to go further, faster, and reduce risk. So this autonomy is increasing autonomy, so you can really go very long distances. And if you're staying in the domain of wheeled rovers, then you might want a rover that can test the ground ahead, because although ExoMars rover will be able to determine a 3D terrain map and navigate through that very well, it can't determine the properties of the soil ahead. So if there's like a sand trap, it has to be a bit careful to avoid those kinds of areas. And if you want to test whether the soil can actually bear the weight, maybe you want a little scout rover that can run ahead and test that. Actually engage in contact doing exactly that, and having a little scout rover going ahead to do mechanical testing of the soil.
So Star Wars. I love it.
But then things further than that. I mean, some of the most interesting places on Mars are probably not on terrain that you can go over with a wheeled rover. What if it's on coast? What if it's down a canyon? What about if you had rock climbing rovers that could detach from a wheeled rover and then go down a cliff, or abseiling devices to get to very interesting geological areas? So those are ideas for the future too.
Are you wedded to wheels? Because although this one's doing a great job of going over a number of different sides, varying in height from say 4 or 5 centimetres to sort of about 15 or so.
Thanks for
Does it
tuning
have to be
in.
wheels? Do you not have to think maybe one step further than that?
Well,
stuffed.
studies people have looked at flying, for
what's
example.
next?
It's rather difficult on Mars because it's very, very thin, so you can't get lift as you can on the Earth atmosphere. But the idea of being able to hop to pressurise the Martian atmosphere inside a pressure vessel, then release this and shoot up in the air, open the braking system, and
that one.
in a controlled manner, maybe hundreds of metres away from where you currently are. That would allow you to go even greater distances more quickly, but of course you have to have an intelligent autonomous system to be able to do that. We have a Mars hopper as a very advanced project idea in the recent past. Whether that ever gets funded, of course.
Meanwhile, Abby, what sort of state is the new ExoMars rover in at the moment?
Well, we're just beginning to get some experiments. It's a really exciting time for us, actually. So testing the actual mechanical properties of those structural materials. And then we're beginning to get some of the flight representative equipment that are going on board the rover as well, so we can start doing our testing of those systems and how they interact with each other. So it's all systems go at the moment.
Abby and Matthew, thanks so much for now. Do stay with us. This is the Space Boffins podcast in partnership with the Naked Scientist. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and on our blog at spaceboffins.com.
In November, along with food, drink, and a living torch, 2 cameras were delivered to the International Space Station.
Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It's currently 12:15. Yeah, 12:15 here.
The cameras were built in the UK by RAL Space for the Canadian company EarthCam, to provide users on the ground with free live pictures of Earth from space. 2 cosmonauts fitted the cameras to the outside of the space station on January 27th, and I joined members of the RAL Space team in Oxfordshire as they watched a live feed of the action. Can I just ask you, this is for Space Boffins podcast, just how it's going so far?
So far, it's all very well. The high resolution camera installed. There's good images from the cosmonauts cameras. The high resolution camera in place. And now we're checking all the connectors, making sure it's and now giving people a wipe off. Things got a bit dirty on the space station. So it's making sure they can see what they need to see, checking everything's alright. And then soon they'll be able to remove the immediate station camera out and start bringing that across to install. So far, so good. Let's see how it goes.
Edward Jones. Also keeping an eye on progress was the director of RAL Space, Professor Richard Hall.
The camera itself is all made, tested and integrated at RAL Space. The detectors, which are the chips inside the cameras, like you have in a digital camera you take your own photographs with, those are provided by another British company, T2B. So it's a great story for the UK. It's world-leading technology. It's the only technology that exists now that the camera is up in space. And of course there are plenty of things that are coming already. So RAL is already discussing the next generation for even high-resolution cameras. Earthcast, NASA have some interest as well in similar development as to the European Space Agency. Again, all using RAL Space.
The key thing here is to use time definition. How much better than what has been done before?
It's about an order of magnitude, so 10 times better than anything's ever been done before. It's 1 meter resolution video, so you can't pick out individual faces of people.
But you could get their car.
But you can get their car.
Oh, yeah,
And also bear in mind that this is still from a height of 160 miles, so it's a long way away. It's not a street view, so there are no particular privacy. Street view, so there are no particular privacy issues. You can't see individual people. You can see individual cars, but you can't read the number plate. So privacy is protected, and in any case, you can see that kind of thing from aircraft. The difference between space and aircraft is simply that the space has much greater coverage. You get almost total global coverage.
If you're watching on Kick, I don't monitor Kick, just come over to Twitch or YouTube and follow High Lows on YouTube. Watching at the moment.
The first images of the video will probably be taken in the next week because they have to check the cameras out and they have to check the systems are operational. And as with any space content, takes a bit.
So by the time this podcast goes out, you'll already have your first video.
The first video will be down by the 10th of February. They probably won't have been because obviously
Boffins and BBC Future. And there's a lot of excitement about the project, isn't there, Matthew? And let's just explain the name, Earthcast.
Yes, it's called Earthcast because you are the cast. So it's looking down on Earth and we are all the cast on the camera.
And they had lots of meetings to discuss that.
It's an inspired idea anyway, isn't it? So I don't think it would be too difficult to come up with a name like that. It's so imaginative.
Do you think that it's what they call a disruptive technology? It will really mess with the Google Maps and the Google Earth, that people will think, actually, this is more exciting. Near live pictures of Earth from space.
Yes and no, because it's really something that is going to inspire the masses. This is about getting lots of people interested in being able to really interact with space and being able to see what's happening right now and being able, maybe their business model is very interesting. If you're prepared to pay a fee, they will have it film over your football field and you can make a hello mum picture with lots of your friends and you can see that from space. And that's a fantastic idea. So this is really about the business model. And of course, the high resolution video camera is 1 meter resolution, so it's not going to show individuals, but it will show quite a lot of detail, and it will, I understand, take something like 150 60-second segments per orbit, potentially. So, and it's highly steerable as well, so it can point in all kinds of directions, but it can't do the whole Earth all at one time. So you can buy a view from it over an area that you're interested in. It's an interesting idea. You can change what we know as conventional Earth observation imaging for a whole bunch of technical reasons, which perhaps I won't go into at the moment.
I was going to say the less technical reason is you could go ahead, you could plan your whole day, you could do your wedding, when it's coming ahead, and it's happening.
That's always a problem with optical imaging. Of course, doesn't have night time and cloud. And of course, it's not in some synchronous orbit because the International Space Station is in low Earth orbit at a lower inclination. You're always going to really quite frequently getting the conditions and so on getting different. But still, fantastic.
It is indeed, and we just want to, because I could do a coughing fit. You come back in there, Matthew, you're working on future concepts, observation satellites as well. So what's the future of observation satellites?
Well, there's an interesting future in these projects to have small satellites, many small satellites in But one thing that we're looking at is putting a very high resolution camera on a telescope and a geostationary orbit. So this is where the current communication satellites are. And as you know, the communication satellites have a fixed view of one part of the Earth. And if you can put the camera that far away, but with a powerful enough optics on it, then you can get really a rock steady view of one part of the Earth in continuous mode. So the idea with putting
I'm absolutely
a very
stuffed.
camera with a huge optical system on it, a geostationary,
Got
you could get
2 more
2
sets of this to
3 meter
do and I'm done for the day.
in colour, in video mode, monitoring quite
But
large areas on a continuous basis.
I might be back a bit later
As you fly past at 7,000
because I need to meal prep.
But you've got a
So
fixed
I need
view
to
of the Earth.
cook up
That
some
will enable
food
all kinds of new
for the rest of the week.
situation monitoring major events, looking
So
at
I'll probably,
disasters, that sort of
maybe
thing.
I'll do another
And
stream
being able
later
to get this kind of real-time view
while I
that
cook.
space systems that we have at the moment.
I don't know, I haven't really feel like
Now, look at
cooking
this,
lately.
a while back we bought a satellite, a tiny, tiny satellite, around the size of 2 postage stamps, as thin as a slice of processed cheese. It was part of the KickSat project, a crowd-funded space program conceived by Cornell University students
I'll let my
Manchester. Well, now it's a reality.
I'll let my phone charge up a bit and then see how I feel a bit later.
Satellites known as Sprites. Unfortunately, due to an administrative error, our Sprite was not loaded on board, but we're still going to follow the project by the East Anglia Amateur Radio Observatory from their base in Hertfordshire, particularly ones operated by the British Amateur Access. Well, guys, go. I spoke to Zach about the project and what happens.
The idea is to make space super cheap and accessible to as many people as possible, so that hobbyists, radio clubs, high school students, university students, anyone really who's interested would be able to do this for actually a few $100. Substantially smaller, substantially easier than space before.
These are all packed into a normal size CubeSat.
So up to now, the sort of smallest way to get into space was in something called a CubeSat, which a number of your listeners are familiar with. So the building is a 3U CubeSat, so it's sort of the size of a loaf of bread roughly.
I think
about 3 kilograms.
my legs are still sore from
the CubeSat as sort of the mothership for
my
about
other leg workout on Friday.
CubeSats are smaller satellites. The CubeSat mothership, which is what we call KickSat, is actually what's getting
The
launched.
squats I did on Friday.
Now, once that's up in space, we're going to make contact with it from our ground station and
My knee was feeling good,
release all of the little guys.
so I decided I'll up the weight.
A SpaceX Vulcan.
Still got my reps in,
Supply mission to the International Space
up a
Station.
higher weight.
Your satellites sort of
I hadn't hit that weight for ages.
sort of piggyback on top of that.
Yeah, that's right.
Because
So this
my-
is typically how CubeSats are launched. These
hurting my
small
left
satellites
knee
are
and
launched
hurting my right knee at work.
You imagine a big rocket like
And
the
then-
SpaceX Falcon 9 that we're riding on. The fairing at the top.
Because I was favouring that knee,
The primary payload is
I
inside
ended
the
up
rocket fairing. There's typically still
hurting my left knee.
left over in little nooks and crannies here and
or my left knee just feels sore all the time.
Up to secondary payload. So if you are okay with going to the same orbit as the primary payload,
That's funny how
you should ride on that rocket for in aerospace terms.
squat form,
There's also several other CubeSats
if I
going up on our launch
launch with us as
if I squat,
so the primary mission, like you said, is a resupply mission to the International Space Station. And we're
if I do a squat where my bum sticks out and I keep my shins vertical, my right knee hurts. If I do a standard squat where I kind of keep my back and you know, keep everything smooth, right? My left knee hurts. So different forms make things hurt differently. This, leg extensions, my knees don't hurt. Quads hurt, and it feels, quads hurt, doing leg extensions, but that's the whole point, I guess. Alright, last step for today. At least my knees don't hurt doing that. Oh, my legs do.
Well, I guess it's fantastic. Because there will be many people who just don't get that, but I think it's incredible.
What about you, Abby? Is it something, I know, you know, it's probably quite blasé, you've worked on so many missions, but does the thought of a postage stamp-sized satellite with your name on it appeal?
It's a great idea. It's always great to see these really innovative new ideas coming into space,
Alright.
because these are the things that are probably going to change the way that we look at satellites in the future. So with miniaturization, you can do useful things with very small devices. So it is perfectly reasonable now to think that we can do swarm missions and have these little sprites and do useful science with them. So that's really exciting.
Well, thanks again to our guests here at Buzz in Stevenage, Abby Hutty and Matthew Stuttard. Perhaps you could get this going again. Abby, that would be great. We might as well hear a little bit of the prototype Mars rover before we end the podcast. Here we go. Excellent. We'll take some pictures of the rover and stick them on our Facebook page, where you can also let us know what you think about the podcast and also the stories we cover.
Within reason. And that's the Space Boffins podcast, produced in partnership with the Naked Scientists and supported by the Atrium Space Insurance Consortium and ADSL Space Products. I'm Richard Hollingham.
And I'm Sue Nelson, and we'll be back next month. Thanks for listening.
Sore throat? Divlan Plus anesthetic plus antibacterial plus anti-inflammatory targets bacteria and painful swelling. Divlan Plus does both. Find it for a great price every day at Chemist Warehouse. Always read the label and follow the directions for use.
Okay.
What are you doing?
I don't have to rush for sales. I'm stopping and smelling the roses.
Oh dear. Alright. That's it for today's workouts.
The price is always low.
Always love it.
So I'm just going through what I'm going to try and do next time. Ooh, incline dumbbell curls. That'll be an incline. So tomorrow, yeah. Looks like I'm going to focus on biceps and shoulders tomorrow. So incline dumbbell curls, incline hammer curls, dumbbell skull crushers. Do you like those? Do you like some skull crushers? So it looks like I'm mainly focusing on shoulders and biceps tomorrow. That's kind of cool. Anyway, that's everything for today. I might come back a bit later while I meal prep for the week. But if not, have a good week. See you next time.